When you turn 70 years old, you will realize a simple but profound thing. What you need is not to add friends, but to reduce the relationships that make you brace yourself. This is not the story of loneliness, but a journey to return to yourself, live gently, free, and no need to prove anything to anyone else. I've been in the health field for over 2 decades, and if there's one truth I've seen play out again and again, it's this. By the time you reach your 70s, you've spent enough of your life trying to prove your worth. Many people don't even realize they're doing it, living to be accepted, liked, admired, holding on to friendships not because they bring joy, but because they don't want to look like they're alone. But here's the thing. You don't need anyone else's approval anymore. Not at this age. Not after everything you've lived through. Let me tell you about a man named Harold. He was 72 when I met him. A retired executive, always sharply dressed, always surrounded by people. For most of his life, he was the guy who had it all together. Everyone knew his name. He was invited to every gathering, every dinner, every golf game. But after retirement, the phone stopped ringing. The texts dried up. The invitations faded. And suddenly, Harold found himself surrounded by silence. One day he came to me and said, "Doc, I've got a contact list full of names, but not a single person I can call just to talk." And I told him something I've shared with many others. Then maybe it's time to stop calling anyone and start reconnecting with yourself. So he did. He stopped saying yes to social events out of habit. He pulled back from relationships that were built on status and small talk. And he returned to something he hadn't touched in 30 years, his old piano. He started walking in the mornings, not to meet people, but just to breathe. And you know what he told me a few months later? "I used to live for recognition. Now I just live." That's the shift. When you let go of the need to prove yourself, to be impressive, to be relevant, to be liked, you gain something far more powerful: peace. You don't have to be seen. You don't have to be important. You just have to be you. And that's more than enough. There's a shift that happens as we grow older. Subtle at first, but undeniable. In your younger years, noise felt like life. The buzz of conversations, the energy of social events, the full calendar. It all felt meaningful. But somewhere along the way, quiet starts to mean more. Not just silence, but real inner peace. The kind of calm that doesn't ask anything from you. The kind that lets you exhale fully without needing to perform, entertain, or keep up. Let me tell you about Margaret, a woman I deeply admire. She's 74 now and used to have an incredibly busy social life. Lunch dates, weekly calls, holiday gatherings. She was always on the move, always surrounded by people. But over time, she started to feel tired. Not physically, emotionally. She told me, "It's like I'm having the same conversations over and over. No one's really listening. We're just passing time." Some friends only called to vent, others to gossip. The joy that used to come from connection had quietly faded into obligation. So Margaret made a decision. She pulled back. She stopped saying yes out of guilt. She stopped answering calls right away. She started choosing stillness over stimulation. Instead of filling her days with small talk, she filled them with meaning. She read books she'd been putting off for years. She took long walks without a destination. She sat by her window and simply enjoyed the view. And one day she said to me, "Solitude isn't lonely, it's peaceful, and peace is the best company I've ever had." You see, at this stage in life, your time is sacred. Your energy is precious. You don't owe your presence to anyone. You don't have to explain why you'd rather stay home than show up. You've earned the right to choose quiet over chaos. So if you've ever felt guilty for stepping back from social obligations, let me reassure you, you're not withdrawing from life. You're finally living it on your own terms. Here's one of the hardest truths I've had to help people face. Not everyone you call a friend is truly there for you. Over the years, I've sat with many older patients as they process the slow unraveling of relationships they once thought were unbreakable. Friends they supported through illness who never called back. People they celebrated birthdays with who now barely send a message. Bonds they assumed were real until silence proved otherwise. Let me tell you about William, a 78-year-old man I worked with for several months. Kind, sharp, generous to a fault. He had friends from college, neighbors he helped for decades, former co-workers he treated like family. But as the years passed, he noticed something. He was always the one reaching out. He was the one calling, the one checking in, the one showing up. And one day he sat across from me and asked, "Why is it that the moment I stopped putting in the effort, they disappeared?" That question haunted him. He wondered if he'd done something wrong, but the truth was simpler and far more freeing. He didn't change. He just stopped tolerating one-sided friendships. That's something many people don't realize until later in life. When you're younger, you're willing to bend over backwards to keep friendships alive, even if they drain you. You tolerate flakiness, you excuse distance, you ignore the imbalance. But after 70, you start valuing your peace more than someone's convenience. William eventually made a choice. He stopped chasing people who didn't show up for him, and in doing so, he gained something invaluable: clarity. He no longer felt let down when someone didn't return his call. He no longer took it personally when friendships faded. Instead, he focused on the few connections that truly mattered. His daughter, an old friend he spoke to once a week, and most importantly, his relationship with himself. Let me be clear. This isn't about cutting everyone off. It's about choosing quality over quantity. One meaningful connection is worth more than a dozen shallow ones. And sometimes that one meaningful connection is the one you have with your own heart. So if friendships have been leaving you more drained than fulfilled, maybe it's not you. Maybe you're just finally realizing that you deserve better. There's a certain shift in mindset that comes with age, and it's this. You stop taking time for granted. In your 30s or 40s, it's easy to assume you'll always have more of it. More time to make plans, more time to socialize, more time to keep up with people who don't always bring you joy. But once you reach your 70s, every hour matters more. Not in a fearful way, but in a deeply intentional way. You become more aware of how you spend your days and who you give them to. Let me introduce you to Richard, 82 years old, a retired history professor, one of the most thoughtful people I've ever met. He used to be what people call socially active. Dinners, phone calls, weekend brunches, always catching up with someone. But then slowly, things began to shift. The long chats started to feel repetitive. The social events began to feel like chores. The energy it took to stay connected started outweighing the benefit of being connected. One afternoon, after sitting through a particularly exhausting lunch filled with surface-level chatter, Richard told me something I'll never forget. Why am I spending my golden years listening to people complain about things that don't even matter to me? So he made a decision, not a bitter one, but a conscious one. He began saying no more often, not because he was lonely, but because he was clear. Clear about what deserved his time. He stopped forcing conversations. He stopped accepting invites out of politeness. And instead, he poured his time into what fulfilled him. Reading, walking in nature, learning a new language, and writing essays just for fun. And here's the beauty of it. I've never felt more alive, Wara, he said, because now, every moment I live is mine. The older you get, the more you realize this simple truth. Time is your most valuable currency, and you should spend it on things that give you peace, joy, and meaning. Not guilt, not obligation, not routine. So if you've ever caught yourself wondering, do I really want to keep up with this friendship? It's okay to ask the harder question, is this the best use of my time? And if the answer is no, you don't owe anyone an explanation. There's a myth that many of us grow up believing, that the key to happiness is surrounding yourself with people. The more friends you have, the more loved you are. The busier your social calendar, the more fulfilled your life must be. But here's the truth I've seen over and over again, especially in those past their 70s. The deepest, most lasting companionship doesn't come from others. It comes from yourself. Let me tell you about Eleanor, one of my longtime clients. She's 76 now, and for most of her adult life, she was the heart of every social circle. Always planning gatherings, checking in on friends, hosting dinner parties, texting first. Her days were full, but her heart wasn't. I kept thinking that the next conversation, the next visit, the next connection would finally make me feel whole, she said. But slowly she started to notice something. Despite all her social energy, she often went to bed feeling emotionally drained. The conversations didn't light her up. They just filled the hours. The friendships, though warm, often came with unspoken rules. Don't say too much. Don't be too honest. Don't change too much, or you might not fit anymore. One day Eleanor stopped. She didn't have a big falling out. She didn't send out a dramatic goodbye. She just paused and then started spending time with the one person she had always put last, herself. She went on solo walks with no destination. She brought a book to cafes instead of waiting for someone to meet her. She began journaling, cooking slowly, and sitting in quiet without checking her phone. And slowly, something shifted. I realized I actually like being with myself, she told me. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel lonely. I felt full. That's what most people miss. Being alone doesn't mean being lonely. It can mean freedom, clarity, and deep personal peace. When you become your own source of comfort, validation, and joy, you stop depending on others to complete you. You stop chasing conversations just to feel seen. You stop adjusting who you are just to belong. And ironically, that's when the right people begin to show up. The ones who respect your silence, honor your space, and add to your peace instead of interrupting it. If you're afraid that stepping away from some friendships will leave you empty, let me reassure you, the best company you'll ever find is already within you. There's something incredibly freeing about letting go. Not in anger, not in resentment, but in clarity. After the age of 70, the most transformative thing you can do isn't adding more to your life. It's subtracting. Letting go of friendships that no longer bring you joy. Letting go of the pressure to keep up appearances. Letting go of the idea that being busy means being happy. That's what happened to James, a 79-year-old former engineer who once believed that staying socially active was the secret to aging well. His calendar was always full, not because he loved it, but because he feared what would happen if it wasn't. He kept old friendships alive out of habit. He said yes to invitations he didn't care for. He stayed in conversations that went nowhere, just to stay connected. But one day he hit a wall. I wasn't enjoying any of it, he said. I was exhausted, not fulfilled. So James did what most people are afraid to do. He let go. He stopped calling people who never called him back. He politely declined invites that felt more like duties than joys. And instead he made space. Space to breathe, to rest, to rediscover what he actually cared about. He started gardening again. He picked up woodworking, something he hadn't done since his 20s. He spent more time outdoors, learned about birds, and even started writing letters. Not to reconnect, but to reflect. I thought I'd feel lonely, he told me, but instead I feel light. I feel alive. That's the gift of letting go. You don't lose your life. You reclaim it. When you stop forcing connections that no longer feel right, you make room for moments that do. Moments of peace, moments of self-discovery, moments that belong fully to you. You no longer live on other people's terms. You live on your own. And maybe, just maybe, for the first time in decades, you finally feel free. If you're still holding on to a friendship that feels more like a burden than a blessing, ask yourself this: is this helping me grow, or is it just keeping me from myself? Because once you find the courage to let go, you'll realize something powerful. Your most fulfilling years might still be ahead of you, not because of who's around you, but because of who you've become. If you've made it this far, I want you to take a deep breath and really sit with this idea. You don't need a crowd to feel complete. You don't need a full room to feel full inside. What you do need, and what you fully deserve, is a life that feels peaceful, honest, and real. After 70, you're not slowing down. You're simplifying. You're refining. You're coming home to yourself. Every story I've shared with you, from Harold to Margaret to William to Eleanor to James, carries the same message. Letting go isn't about giving up. It's about choosing yourself. This chapter of life isn't about trying to hold on to what was. It's about embracing what is and making space for what can be. So if you've been questioning whether it's okay to step back, if you've been feeling guilty for wanting more peace and less pressure, let this be your permission. It is more than okay. It is necessary, because the truth is simple. You are not alone when you have peace. You are not empty when you're full of clarity. You are not less just because your circle is smaller. In fact, you may be more than ever. So live slower, breathe deeper, love your own company, let go without fear, and trust that what's meant to stay will stay effortlessly. And the rest, let it fade. Because at the end of the day, this life is yours, and you've earned the right to live it your way.